All right, guys, we're back. It's July, end of July, walking into August right now. I got some of my top moving baits for the summertime that I like to throw for largemouth. So I'm gonna start off with one of the fun ones, and that's gonna be a topwater. This is gonna be something that I pick up quite a bit early mornings, especially around, big schools of bluegill. Largemouth up in Minnesota love hanging out with bluegill a lot of the times. And when they're driving them to the surface and they're crashing it, that couldn't be a better time than to throw this thing. And one thing that I really like about it is, number one, it's big. Largemouth locate their targets with their lateral line in their back. So sound and vibrations are definitely the way that they like to track stuff. So this bait, it just puts off a lot of noise in the water. It also makes a knocking sound, just like that. And what that does is, if you've ever heard bluegill coming up to the surface and sucking down bugs, it mimics that sound. It's kind of like a cracking sound. So it does that. This is a Rapala Skitter V13. It's a pretty sweet bait, man. I mean, it makes a lot of noise, bright orange belly, and is just perfect for getting those fish to draw on it, which I've seen a lot of fish come up to it, circle it, you'll see them trailing it from behind it. It just means that it gets their attention. And if anything else, it'll get a fish to show itself if it won't actually fight the bait. But this is definitely one of my favorite moving baits to use. And then I'm throwing it with a 7'3" medium heavy rod. I got braid to mono on this rod. And part of the reason for the mono is just so that this bait does not wrap up into the braid. A lot of times too, when you're casting these things far, the bait wants to barrel roll a little bit. And if you're just using braid is just so limp to where the bait will want to catch onto your braid, or the treble hooks do. So what I do is tie just a little piece of 20-pound monofilament on there. Gives it a little stretch, a little cushion for the hooks, but not a ton. And then it just makes it to where that doesn't happen near as frequently. It's just got a little bit of stiffness to it. And then I'm using a Daiwa Tatula 100 HSL, which is a great reel for throwing this thing. But good search bait, get your fish to show themselves, and it's a fun way to catch them if nothing else. All right, next, it's cranking season, man. So I found several different scenarios to use this crankbait. And my favorite one is to get on the grass edges and parallel them, especially the ones where, you see a bunch of bait scattered off of it. Bass do like to get underneath that bait. And one thing is, this just looks a little bit different than what you see when you scan over and see a big school of bluegill. It's doing something that's just a little bit different than the school's doing, and that's what gets those fish. That's how this bait has some draw power to it. This is like one of my favorite colors. I don't remember what it's called, but it's like a crawdad pattern, and it gets bit. I mean, hands down. I like using a fiberglass rod because I don't feel like I dump the fish a bunch. So it definitely provides that cushion that you need. Anytime you're dealing with treble hooks, you do want some type of cushion so that they don't rip them out. That can happen pretty easily just by like 1 or 2 jumps, fish is gone. But one thing that's nice about a crankbait, you can fish it really fast. You can get up and down the bank pretty quick, and you don't have to soak an area down. And it's a great way in practice just to find a good area with fish if you're practicing for a derby or whatnot, whatever the case may be. Now, this is a Rapala DT10. I throw Rapalas, Strike King 6XDs, stuff like that. Any type of crankbait that dives like 10, 15 feet is gonna be the deal this time of year. Now, another way you can use this too is when you get over hard bottom. Get over hard bottom, this thing bounces off the rocks really good. You can, if you do get caught, you can stop it and it'll want to float up a little bit and you can just drag it right out. So it's great for that. I use it for smallmouth and largemouth both. And then the reel that I'm using is a Daiwa CT 6.3, and I think that 6.3 gear ratio is super critical because you can get the bait to wind slow enough. And one thing that I do with this bait a lot is when I'm cranking it, I'm constantly changing up speeds. So I don't have a specific cadence that I use. I'm just always changing up the speeds. Sometimes I'll stop it, sometimes I'll burn it and then slow it way down. But those changes in speeds definitely is gonna trigger you some strikes. And then I'm using 10-pound fluorocarbon on it. You can use 12. but I just want this thing to dive to the truest depth possible. And you know, I'm not really worried about getting caught in weeds or anything like that with this, or breaking off. It is what it is. So 10 pound fluorocarbon, Seaguar and Vizex to a 6:3 gear ratio reel is going to be super critical to this setup. All right, next we have one of my favorite moving baits in the summertime. Bass seem to love this thing. This is the Outcast Tackle Chicken, and you know, this is a big deal up in Minnesota right now. A lot of people are talking about oversized hair jigs, and this originated down in Tennessee, and it's made its way up here. Some of the lakes out here, these fish have never seen anything like this, and they absolutely chew it. It's a big fish catcher. One of the ways that I like to throw this thing is I like to throw it out. I like to let it fall, and then I'll pick up the slack and wind it super fast, and then let it fall again, and then pick it up and do the same thing and just wash, rinse, repeat on this. And that seems to trigger the strikes. You know, it seems like the water's got to get just a little bit colder for those fish to eat it on like a steady retrieve. But before that, before the water gets cold, that is the best way to catch them, is just letting it hit bottom, and then literally popping it up and giving it a slow retrieve, letting it hit bottom, like I said. So this thing can be fished over hard bottom. I think that's when it shines the best. This is a 5/8. 5/8 or half ounce is probably the best size. Half ounce does take a little bit longer for it to sink. It's definitely a feel-good situation as far as what size you want to use. Probably use 5/8 for deeper water, and then use, you know, your half ounce for shallower stuff. It's not really great for coming through the weeds, but you can fish it above deeper weeds. You know that if you get over some weeds that are like submerged into like 16 feet, you can swim it over the top of them, and that works really well too. But just a great bait in general. There's no way that you have to fish this. I know guys that fish it with braid to leader, and I know guys that fish it with all fluoro. I'm an all fluoro guy when it comes to most moving baits, so I really do like the all 20 pound Daiwa Samurai fluorocarbon. And then I got a Daiwa Tatula Type R that I throw it with, and that's an 8-to-1. And then I'm using a 7'6" medium heavy rod to do it with, and that seems to be absolutely perfect for the application. But like I said, a guy could use braid to leader on this, and it's not going to hurt him. I know plenty of guys that do. This color is called bluegill, and this is probably going to be my favorite color out of the chicken lineup. There's also a crappie color that I really like too. It's kind of like this, looks a little bit like this, and that's sweet as well. So any lake where there's a ton of bluegill, which is most of them, this is gonna freaking shine too. So it's just a subtle presentation. It doesn't do a ton in the water. It's just kind of floating around. So it's a good moving bait to get bites on when the bite's tough. So great search bait too, by the way. We got another good moving bait that I like to throw in the summertime. This is the Jackhammer ChatterBait. I pretty much exclusively throw a Jackhammer ChatterBait. I don't run any other ones. I don't think that there's one that comes out of the grass better, and one that you can wind at the speed that I like to wind at. I like to really slow this thing down big time and have it to where the bait is just vibrating just barely as I'm cranking it in. I want to move it just fast enough for the bait to shake. And with the Jackhammer, it wants to shake at like really low speeds. So that's what I really like about it. You can put a swim bait, you can put a craw trailer on this thing. I have a Yamamoto Seiko on it, and I think that this is a great combination. Paddle tail works good too. I like throwing the paddle tail more in the springtime. In the summertime, I like to switch over to something like this or like a craw trailer. This bait is very good for searching and fishing fast. You can fish it deep or you can fish it shallow. I like running a half ounce between, you got 12 to 16 foot range. And once I get a little bit shallower than that, I'll throw a 3/8. And if I get deeper than that, sometimes I will go down to, or go up to a 3/4 ounce. So, colors, You know, I like black and blue, but I also like green pumpkin too a lot. Throwing it with a fiberglass rod. This is a medium heavy 7'4" rod. Like I said before, I just think that fiberglass does a great job with moving baits, dims that sensitivity down just a little bit so you don't overswing on these fish. And a lot of times I'm just holding the rod out, the fish bites it, and I just kind of let him do the work and let the rod and reel do the work too as well. So that slingshots the bait into the fish's mouth exactly where it's supposed to be, and you don't lose a ton of them doing this. Run it with a Daiwa Tatula SV81 8-to-1, and that's like the perfect reel for it too as well. So great combo to throw. ChatterBait gets bit quite a bit in the summertime, and it's just an awesome overall moving bait. Last but not least, we have the old school. It's like the bait that everybody grew up throwing when they were a kid. A lot of guys get into this bait when they're first starting off bass fishing, and it's never left my deck. This is a Bassman spinnerbait. It's one of the better spinnerbaits on the market. There are times when this thing will outshine anything on your deck. That's why it stays there. This color is like more of a brown / copper color, and then I just have a grub on the back of it. Now, sometimes I'll throw a paddle tail on there. Sometimes I'll throw something with more craws, but for the most part, I really like throwing like an old school grub on there. Gold blades on this one, and I don't, you know, like I said, I don't throw this a ton, but in certain situations, this bait will do the deal. You know, a lot of lakes that have dingier water clarity or on cloudy days with a little bit of wind, this bait just seems to work really good. So all right, guys, so I will put all the tackle in this video. I'll link it down below. You guys can purchase it through Omnia. And if you guys find something that's not in stock, on the bottom, there's an email me when in stock button. Go ahead and hit that, and they will send you a notification as soon as they do get it in stock, and you can just go on there and order it right away if you need to. So that's one of the benefits of Omnia. I am doing largemouth bass trips up here in the Central Lakes area all through July and August. So if you guys are looking to do a largemouth outing, definitely get a hold of me. We'll go out and we'll catch some good ones. One free way that you guys can support the channel is if you guys go on, subscribe, comment, and like the video, and definitely share it if you guys know anybody that needs help, a little bit of help in tackle selection or anything like that. I really like doing these types of videos. We like to show what's working out on the water. Like, we don't like to keep things secret and all that stuff. We want to give you guys the juice. So this is all the stuff that I actually throw. I'm not like affiliated with most of these companies. This is the stuff. So until next time, guys, we'll see you guys on the water.
Always me versus me, it was never me versus you. Misunderstood, get up, had to beat those eyes. Got up and I